Following the Trailblazers' strong finish in the second half of the season, our Trailblazer insider Sean Highkin will join the show coming up at 3:20 for the latest. The Trailblazers defeated the Spurs yesterday at Moda Center, 120-109. Portland now guaranteed of having a winning record at home for the first time since the 2021 season. Tamani Kamara led the team with 23 points and 10 boards. Shaedon Sharpe a double-double, 21 points and 10 rebounds. The Blazers have 3 games left. At Utah on Wednesday night is the next one up. Tip-off at 6. Our coverage will start at 4 with Blazers Game Day hosted by Chris Burkhardt. Portland was eliminated from play-in contention yesterday with the Kings win in Cleveland. NCAA title game coming up tonight. Show me your Cougar. I am live at Spirit Mountain Casino, broadcasting live. Game will tip off at 6. Houston and Florida Gators are currently a 1.5-point favorite.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah! It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Like I always said all the time, it's a team sport, and without my boys, the whole organization, the fans, the trainers, coaches, I would never stand there, and obviously I would never pass a great one. So, fellas, thank you very much. I love you so much.
I can tell you firsthand, I know how hard it is to get the 894. 895 is pretty special. My congratulations to not only Alex, his mom and dad, his family, his wife and kids. When I broke the record, my 2 kids were about the age of his boys, so it's kind of reminiscent for me, and I'm so happy that 2 of my boys are here tonight. But there's nothing better than the National Hockey League. They say records are made to be broken, but I'm not sure who's going to get more goals than that.
I mean, it was an incredible season. Incredible people, incredible relationships that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. Didn't end the way we wanted it to, but still an incredible year.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
Man, how about Ovechkin passing the great one, Wayne Gretzky? That's one of those records I thought you could put up on a wall and it would stay there forever. All right, what's going on? Chad Dewing with you. You almost lost your radio host last night. Miranda almost got her wish. Well, I wouldn't have died by aneurysm, well, maybe, or by fire, but I almost passed away last night. I'll explain that here in just a moment, and I'm not even joking about it. I'm here at Spirit Mountain Casino, getting ready for the National Championship game coming up tonight. Tip-off is at 6. We've got March Mania drawings down here. The game will tip off at 6. Right now, Houston is a 1.5-point underdog to the Florida Gators, and we'll get into the game. That game between Duke and Houston was one of the best college basketball games I have seen in a long time, and it reminded me of the tournament, from when I was younger, when you would have games like that, highly contested games, and teams collapsing at the end. What a wild finish, and what a crazy way for Cooper Flagg to end his Duke career. Suddenly, Duke is Duke. I can't believe they went down. 11-1 run to close it. They outscored Duke 28-11 in the final 11:54 of the game, and I believe Duke had a 1 field goal. The 2 craziest stats, Duke with 1 field goal in the final 10.5 minutes of the game, and they didn't have a rebound in the final 4 minutes. And that's how Houston got in. They just continue to grind and get after it the way Kelvin Sampson would like. They're crazy, absolutely crazy. Now, coming up on the show, the Godfather Dwight Jaynes is going to join the program at 4:20. We'll get his take on a couple of Trailblazer items. We'll also talk about Cooper Flagg, what he sees in Flagg, what he sees in Flagg as an NBA player, what type of talent is he. The Godfather will share his thoughts. And then also, what is Denny Avdia? Is he a number 1? Is he a number 2? And more importantly, if he is a number 2 to a legit 1, then how do you know how Avdia would produce next to a true number 1? Because this year in Portland, Avdia has been fabulous, but he's also had complete freedom from head coach Chauncey Billups. So how do you translate that? So we'll talk to the Godfather at 4:20. Sean Highkin is going to join us coming up in about 15 to 20 minutes to talk about the news that we got from your Portland Trailblazers today, that Joe Cronin has agreed to a multi-year extension. So if you want to jump on board, the telephone number is 503-248-0620. You can find me on social at Chad in Rip City, at Chad in Rip City. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Now, if you're looking for a place to watch the title game, you know the deal. You got to get down here to Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports. Vegas-style sportsbook with big cushy chairs to chill in. You've got 10 Barrel Brewing a few steps away where you can get a bite and a brew. We got the stadium bar. It's basically everything you need to enjoy a game is right here. And I'm sitting below a video wall that is massive with games in all directions. So get on down here for the championship game as we close out March Madness in style with Houston and Florida. So last night, and I'll get to Joe Cronin here in just a moment, and I learned a truth about Joe Cronin yesterday that I did not know, and I think it's pretty awesome. But last night, and I was doing a lot of different work. I went to the Blazer game, handled my duties there, and then I had to go to the station because I was doing work for the program today. And it was dark, and you know those parking lots that aren't exactly well lit? Well, that would be the parking lot that sits around our building where the station is at. And I was doing my thing. I was bumping around, doing my thing, not in a hurry, but I was moving swiftly to get to where I needed to be to get things done. And I had my backpack slung around one shoulder, and out of nowhere, I hit one of those cement curb stops or whatever they call those things for, parking. Those little cement blocks in parking spaces that are, raised up above the ground a bit. And I tripped over it, didn't even see it. And I went straight down. And I'm telling you, I don't know how, but I got my hands out just in time to break the fall. And I thought for sure I was going to smash my face into the concrete. And the worst part was, this is later on at night after the Blazer game, there was no one out there. And I park on the back side of the building where no one is at. And so I would have been laying out there either dead or concussed, and there would have been no one around with the rain coming down on top of my dome. And luckily I broke my fall. And thankfully, I didn't break any bones that I'm aware of. I did tear a gouge out of one of the calluses on my hand, and I scuffed up the front part of my shin. Oh, by the way, why is it when you hit certain parts of your body, like a little toe or like the front part of your shin, why does it feel like you've gone straight to HE double hockey sticks? How can something like that cause so much devastation and pain in your body? I don't even know how it's possible, but I was in agony. And then it was one of those deals where I'm lying there for a second trying to collect myself and what just happened, and I realized I was okay. I felt my knee a little bit, and I felt the shin, but I knew it was nothing serious. And then, of course, my hand was bleeding, but I didn't know it. But you know how you don't realize your hand is bleeding until you've touched other parts of your body and stuff? Well, I was a complete mess. So I'm telling you, Miranda, I know you've been wishing me to die for about 25 years now. It almost came true last night. You almost. I mean, I was just a scotch away from just me being over, like not being here to do the show, just checking out at age 49. That close. And it reminded me of my mom. I think I shared this story, but a couple of years ago, my mom and dad were on, their trip up to Glacier, and they had stopped off at some, casino along the way to go get some dinner. And when she was coming out, she tripped over the same type of deal, and she went crashing down, smacked her dome, broke her shoulder, like she shattered her shoulder. It was a horrific fall, and I had a flashback to my mom telling me stories about that. It was that close. But then I was thinking, this is why I work out. I've had the same workout partner for 33 years. This is why you strength train, to have better bone density, to make sure you're in good condition. And this is why you stay in shape so you can have mobility. So when you take a fall like that, or your daughter decides to use the bath beads and won't rinse it out when she's done, and I slip out of the shower, go through the curtain onto the floor, you can survive a fall like that. But those things are dangerous. It's like nice lighting, too, by the way. And I'm not blaming the lighting. It was partially the problem. The other part of the problem is that I'm just kind of a klutz, but, man, it was that close. All right, let's talk about Joe Cronin. I'm alive. I'm here, and I feel good. Got the gouge in my hand, but I'm going to survive that. So here's the deal with Joe Cronin. I did not know this until I was talking with someone before the game yesterday. But Joe Cronin started back in 2006 with the Trailblazers as an intern. I started out as an intern, and I worked my way all the way up to update host. Joe Cronin started out as an intern and worked his way all the way up to being the general manager of the Portland freaking Trailblazers. Love the story. And he did one of those deals where you're interning and you're making no money, and you want a career in basketball, so you just take a bunch of credit cards and charge up your life on credit while you're learning how to work and understanding the game and how to get into the game and how to, kind of get your foot in the door, right? That's what it's all about. Well, Cronin did that, and now he's the general manager of the team, and today he's signed a multi-year extension. Now, I'm a big fan of Joe Cronin. I think, like Chauncey Billups, he is learning and growing on the job. But if you just simply look at the work that he's done thus far, and he took the team in a totally different direction after he took over for Neil Olshey, where he got rid of the past and moved into the future. And he traded away a franchise cornerstone in Damian Lillard. That takes some sack, but he did it. And if you look at the players that he's been able to acquire, they went out and they drafted Donovan Clingan in last year's draft. They went out a couple of years ago and got Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson. And then he made a shrewd move to make sure he secured Tamani Kamara in the Dame deal, and then made the trade for Denny Avdia on draft night last year. So he's amassed some very good young talent, and you can see the future, the light at the end of the tunnel, where this team was competing this year for the play-in spot and nearly got there. And now the question is, what is the next step for Joe, and how does he continue to complete this roster out? I love the 5 young guys, Scoot, Shaden, Clingan, Tamani, and Denny. Now, I don't know if any of those 5 guys are a true, alpha number 1. So they may still be looking for the alpha, which is always going to be tough to secure. But the other big thing, too, with Joe Cronin is the assets that he got back. Players like Matisse Thybulle, Donovan Clingan, Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton. These players that he got back, the veterans that he's going to be moving here in the near future, what does he get back for Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant and DeAndre Ayton and Matisse Thybulle and Robert Williams? So I think with Joe Cronin, the work so far has been really good, but I think his story is going to be told as he continues to work through those assets. What draft pick do they get in the upcoming draft? Do they jump up into the top 4? Do they get an act of God and get Cooper Flagg? And what does he do with the veteran assets that he's going to have to move this summer and in the near future? What does he get in return for Ant, Grant, Ayton, Thybulle, and Robert Williams? And then once those moves are done, then I think we'll be able to take a real good look at the work that he's done. And I think that will, tell a few more chapters of his story. But so far, Cronin, I think, has done a very good job, especially working in a situation where he had to move on from a franchise cornerstone. And Joe Cronin's a good dude. Not going to lie. I do like him. He communicates really well. I think he's gotten much better over the last couple of years in dealing with media and representing the franchise. I just think it's neat to see a guy go from intern all the way up to running the team and now gets a multi-year extension. So congratulations to Joe Cronin. It's well-deserved. All right, when we come back, we'll get more details on this. Sean Highkin, our Trailblazers insider, will join the program. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino, your Northwest premier entertainment destination. And it's your place to bet on college sports. I'm chilling in the sports book right now, getting ready for the title game tonight with Houston and Florida. The Gators, according to the board here at Spirit Mountain, are currently set as a 1.5-point favorite. Tip-off will be at 6. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. All right, joining us now is our Trailblazer insider. You can read him at rosegardenreport.com, and he's got a piece up on the news that broke today, and he's with us here at 620 Rip City Radio. I'm talking about Sean Highkin, who's back on the program. Sean, were you surprised that the news dropped today that Joe Cronin got extended on a multi-year deal?
I was a little bit surprised that it happened today. I hadn't heard that it was in the works, but I knew that at some point in the next few months they were going to have to figure something out, because when they what I haven't been able to figure out yet, so they back in May of 2022, which is when he was officially given the job on a permanent basis as opposed to being the interim GM like he was for a few months before that, they signed a 4-year deal at that time. And what I haven't been able, so this coming year, 25-26, would have been the last year. What I haven't been able to figure out is whether that last year was an option year, like what Chauncey has, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later, or whether it was a straight 4 years. But either way, they were going to have to make a decision with Joe and kind of get his long-term future and situation figured out soon so that they could move forward with whatever else they decide to do this summer on, a variety of fronts. So, they got that done today, and now, I guess whatever happens in the off season, we know who's going to be the one making the decisions.
Well, I should have sent something yesterday. I saw Joe in passing before the game against the Spurs, and he's always in a very good mood, but he seemed to be a little extra happy yesterday. I should have known, man, something was coming down the pipe, but I'm happy for Joe. But let me ask you this, with the work that he's done, how would you grade Joe thus far through the 3 years that he's been on the job and all the various things that he's done? The franchise, as you pointed out throughout the year, has undergone massive change in a very short period of time.
Huge changes. I think there's been some. You can certainly point to some things and say there are things that he could have handled better or handled differently. Where, as he kind of grew into the job. But if you look at the really big stuff, the way that he handled the Damian Lillard trade, where he was kind of under a lot of pressure publicly to send him to Miami and nowhere else, and he kind of hung in there and didn't cave to that and ended up getting a much better deal than I think he could have gotten from any version of what they could have gotten from Miami. I think you have to, point to that. You have to point to the trade that they made this past summer that we've talked about many times for Denny Avdia, that could be seen as kind of a risk for a rebuilding team to actually give up draft capital to bring a player in, and then you look at how well that's worked out. So, there are things to point to that, he certainly has them going in a good direction. If you look at what's happened the second half of the season, now, there are times throughout his tenure, I'm not going to pretend it's been perfect. You look at, his first trade deadline, that trade for Norm Powell and that Norm Powell-Robert Covington trade where they didn't really get too much back. I think the objective of that deal was to just get that money off the books at any cost, because he had inherited such a messy cap sheet from Neil O'Shea. But, you look back in retrospect at that deal and, it doesn't seem like they got a lot back there. And then I think the other thing that, if you want to point to, an area where maybe he didn't handle something as well as he could have, I think he went way too hard publicly, after the 23 trade deadline and after the 23 season about how they were going to push all their chips in to rebuild around, to put talent around Damian Lillard. And he was so public about that when it didn't end up happening that way, or there weren't any deals that he liked that would have accomplished that goal, that doesn't make him look very good when he was so public about that being the goal. And I think he kind of learned from that as, don't tip your hand that strongly and make these big promises that you can't keep. So I think ever since Dame actually requested a trade, basically the job that he's done after Dame requested a trade and the job that he maybe did before Dame requested a trade are kind of two different jobs. And the latter one is the one that matters the most. And I think on that front, he's largely done very well, at least in my view.
Well, I think that's a great assessment, and I agree. But like Coach Billups, Joe Cronin's been learning on the job, and I just thought when he made those statements about, going all in on building around Dame was, that's a young GM who, with time will learn what to say, what not to say. And so I think you learn in those moments, and he certainly has. And I think he's gotten a lot better in terms of interviews and dealing with the media and the way he presents himself. I've been impressed with that growth that he's had there, and so that's been pretty nice. I guess the way I look at it is, Sean, and I want your thoughts, is where, I think the work overall that he's done so far has been, really good, and I like the young talent that he's amassed. But the way I look at it is that, his story hasn't been told yet, meaning, He's still got, the upcoming draft. Where do they land in the lottery and what player are they able to acquire there? But most importantly, the veteran players that he's taken back, guys like DeAndre Ayton, Matisse Thybulle, Robert Williams, and then you have Jeremy Grant and you've got Anthony Simons. What he's able to get in return for those veterans, I think, will be a big part of his story and legacy and what he's been able to accomplish here in Portland. How do you see it?
No, I mean, there's a lot of work, I think, that still has to be done in the offseason as far as what the roster looks like with, a lot of those guys that you named. Out of those guys, I think DeAndre Ayton is probably the one that's most likely to be, I don't know about, beyond next season, but the guy that I think is most likely to, have a real case to stick around this season or this coming season. But, they have to figure something out with the Jeremy Grant thing and the Anthony Simons thing at the minimum. It's, with how much, how much better Shaedon Sharp and Scoot Henderson have gotten. I think they have enough to feel like that's the backcourt of the future. And then, with Toumani Camara, Denny Avdia as the forwards, those Grant and Simons, I think, are the two that you have to figure something out with. So we'll see what he's able to do on that front this summer. There's definitely still some decisions that have to be made. But if you look at where they were, and we've talked about this many times also, if you look at where they were a year ago and what there was to point to for the organization to be happy about versus what there is now, I don't think there really was a lot to be optimistic about a year ago. And now I feel like there's quite a lot to be optimistic about.
I agree. We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. I learned a truth yesterday, and I know it was mentioned in the press release today, but I didn't know this until yesterday. I was talking with a couple of people, but I love Joe Cronin's story. He's a self-made man, meaning he was an intern with the Trailblazers back in 2006, and it was one of those deals where he wanted to get into basketball. This is back where it reminds me of my old days of radio where you're not making any money as an intern, so you're charging up credit cards, for your living expenses because you're trying to get the experience necessary to latch on and get a job, and yet he found a way to do it, and now he's leading the team and just got a multi-year extension to be with the Trailblazers into the foreseeable future. I love success stories like that. That's pretty remarkable to go from intern to GM.
Well, whenever you're in that position, you kind of have to make yourself valuable. He started out as an intern under Kevin Pritchard. That's how far back it went. He joined, around the Roy Aldridge draft, and then he was there for the Greg Oden draft and all that stuff. And as they kind of went through all these different front office regime changes, you go from Kevin Pritchard to Rich Cho, and then there was that weird year period after they fire Rich Cho and they basically don't have a GM for a year, and Chad Buchanan is doing it on an interim basis, and then they hire Neil Olshey. He kind of just stuck around as this is a nice guy that people like working with, so they're not going to get rid of him when a new regime comes in, and he also really knows the salary cap really. I think the two things that he, in those early days built his reputation on were really knowing the salary cap and the ins and outs of the CBA, and then also some of the scouting stuff that we're seeing kind of come to fruition now. But you kind of you kind of stick around as we like this guy from the last regime, we want to keep him around, and he knows his stuff as far as those couple of things. And then it got to this point where in 2021, when they had the investigation with Neil Olshey as far as the workplace conduct stuff, Joe kind of got that job by default because he's the only guy. The other two assistant GMs, Bill Branch and Steve Rosenberry, were guys that Neil brought in. And so when they fired Neil after that investigation, they kind of wanted to clean house of everybody that was associated with Neil or that was, Neil's guys. And Joe, just kind of by virtue of being the guy that had been there before Neil and wasn't somebody that Neil had brought in or that was attached to Neil, just kind of by default, he ended up with the job. And it was very much a prove it thing. He got the job on an interim basis. And then, that trade deadline, they did, the C.J. McCollum trade, the Norm Powell and Robert Covington trade. And, he kind of got a free pass to, tank and take a step back because Dame had undergone that core muscle surgery. And, at that point around the draft lottery, they just, the organization just kind of decided, hey, this guy has articulated a vision to us as far as, what he wants to do long term, how he wants to build this, and we like this. And so they gave him the job permanently. And now I guess here we are.
That's terrific. All right. I want to talk about Chauncey Billups. Here's what I'm wondering about Chauncey. with the way that he has continued to develop and grow, and we've seen the improvements with the team this year, especially in the second half of the season, and with the growth and development of the young players, has he at least put pressure on the front office to where they have to stop and reconsider about their future and what they're going to do at head coach?
I don't think it's off the table, and I think at the very least, Chauncey's earned the right to sit down and have a conversation with them about, like,
yes.
Do we want to move forward together? Do we not want to? And maybe they still decide they don't. You and I have been talking about this on the air for like a full year at this point, where we've all just kind of been operating as though, they haven't picked up Chauncey's team option for next year. I checked on that again this morning and was told nothing has changed on that front as of right now.
Okay.
So. They still, as of right now, his contract is still set to expire in a week after the season is over. So I had just kind of been under the assumption until something changed on that front that they were going to finish out this season and then just, mutually agree to part ways and go in another direction. And for the first half of this season, it just felt like, yeah, that's definitely where that's trending because they were as bad as everybody kind of expected them to be. And then, I don't know, once that turnaround happened in the second half of the season where they started winning a bunch and started actually making a push for the play-in, I don't know. I honestly would not be surprised either way whether Chauncey is back next year or not back next year at this point. Like, I think there's real arguments to make on both sides. If you want to make the argument that, Chauncey has grown into the job and, he's done a great job with this group in the second half of the season, and they've, and players are still bought into him, and he's earned the right to, see this through now that they seem like they're kind of poised to take the next step. I think that's a real argument that you can make. If you want to make the argument that, Chauncey is a point A to point B coach, and it's probably better, for at this point for all sides to move on, and you probably need to hire a new coach to, really take things to the next level, as we kind of saw in Detroit and we saw in Cleveland, and we've seen kind of, Houston a couple of years ago when they hired Udoka. You can make that argument too. Like, I think there's a fair argument to make on both sides. So it's certainly something that they're going to talk about. I mean, whether they want to bring Chauncey back, honestly, whether Chauncey wants to come back, because I think he's going to have options this summer as far as, other coaching openings. If, it's not like, I don't know if he's like desperate to come back and would be willing to take a bad deal to come back, or just come back on just that option year and run this back for another year. So I don't know. I mean, it's more of an open question than maybe it was even a month ago. So I'll be interested to see the way it goes in the next week or two.
Yeah, well, just based on what I know by standard operating procedure in sport, I think it's unlikely he would come back as a lame duck coach on just picking up the option. So if they're going to bring him back, my guess is it would have to be on a multi-year extension. And so that's what I'm curious to see how that plays out. But, Sean, I've already figured this out for you and I. You just got finished writing a piece that was, many words about all the different times you were wrong about the Portland Trailblazers, right? and I've been wrong about the Trailblazers too. So I think you and I need to pull a little George Costanza here and realize that if our every instinct is wrong, then the opposite would have to be true. So therefore, based on that logic, I'm going to have to assume Chauncey Billups is coming back, because if I just go opposition theory, I'm probably going to be in a good spot. How does that sound?
I don't think it's off the table. So.
But, well, the thing is, too, that's interesting is, how much interest does Chauncey have around the league, right? I mean, have you heard of any, does Phoenix have interest? Is there somewhere else that, maybe the Pelicans or is there other teams that have interest in a coach like Chauncey?
Phoenix is the one that I think would be, if the Blazers and him do decide to move on from each other, I think Phoenix is really the one to circle, because, we know he has, long-standing relationships with both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and there was, I think, I don't know, I haven't been able to get a straight answer on the level of mutual interest, but I think there was at least some level of mutual interest last year around, April, May, when there was kind of some uncertainty going on with, after the Suns fired Frank Vogel, and, Joe and Chauncey kind of said different things about what at their exit interviews about what their hope for the season was. And so I think if Chauncey were to hit the market, I think that's the job that would, I would say would be the smart money would be on him, having a strong chance at landing. But again, as of right now, that job's not open. Everybody kind of thinks they're going to fire Mike Budenholzer at the end of the season, but we've thought so many things over over the years. So I don't know. But I do know that Chauncey has a lot of fans around the NBA, and has a lot of
well
respect around the NBA, and especially the job that he's done in the last second half of the season. I think teams, and other organizations and the rest of the NBA are looking at that, and if he were to be on the market, I think there would be some interest from teams in maybe saying, hey, this guy, let's give him another shot.
No question about it. Have you heard, do you have any insight? Is Burke Cold pleased with the work of Chauncey Billups?
Seems like everybody. I mean, Burke's the one that's got to sign off on, a lot of things. He's got to sign off. I mean, he had to sign off on this extension for Joe, and, he's going to have to sign off on whatever. I haven't heard that he's not, but I also don't know Bird at all. I've met him like twice, so I don't really have any insight into that.
Okay, one final question for you before you take off, Sean. What'd you make of that Duke meltdown against Houston? How crazy was that? 11-1 run down the stretch. They outscored them 28-11 in the final 11:54. Duke had one field goal in the final 10:30 of the game, and they didn't have a rebound in the final 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough way for Cooper Flagg to go out.
Gosh, crazy. Yeah, but there's no question after watching him, his size, his skill level, he's going to be a dynamo in the NBA, man. I can't wait. He's awesome. He's awesome, Sean.
And these guys are going to have probably, a 4.5% chance at this point?
It looks like, don't you think they're probably going to stay locked in at the 9 spot, so they'll have a 4.5% chance at Flagg?
Because San Antonio was a team that they were competing with for that 9 versus 8 and beating them last night. I think at this point, it's pretty much locked in.
Do you think we'll see Denny Avdia again this year?
Probably not. I mean... I was a little surprised that Tumani played yesterday, but
me too. Me too. Yeah. But I thought he played great.
I think with Tumani, he's pushing for that all defense votes. I think he wants to really just leave a strong impression to close out the season. Not that these last 2 or 3 games should really matter much or swing anybody's vote, but it's a little bit easier to make that case when you aren't being shut down for the season with an injury. And he looked pretty good yesterday.
All right, Sean, you're awesome, man. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. Check it out, rosegardenreport.com. He's got his latest up on Joe Cronin. I appreciate you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, Sean Hyken, Rose Garden Report. That's pretty cool. What did it say here in the press release? Quote, Joe has demonstrated leadership and vision during his time as general manager, and I'm excited to see him continue building the foundation for a long-term winning team. That's according to Jody Allen. We are thrilled with the team's forward momentum and excited for the future of Trailblazers basketball. Quote, I am honored that Jody and Bird have put their continued trust in me and thank them for believing in this opportunity to further our pursuit of building a winning team in Portland. That's Joe Cronin. He went on to say, my vision is to have a competitive roster with the potential for sustained success while creating a culture that helps all of our players, coaches, and staff thrive. I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. So there you go. Like I said, he's a self-made man. The dude was an intern in 06, and now he's the general manager. That's baller status right there. Hey, Chad, what have you done with your life? Not much. Hey, Joe, what have you done? Well, I went from intern to running the Portland Trailblazers. But, Joe, I went from intern to being an update guy, an update slap at one of the other stations in town. And then I was demoted. How does that sound? Well, that's okay. So there you have it. Joe Cronin inks a multi-year extension. And I'm fascinated by the Chauncey Billups story, where he has rejuvenated himself and now put himself in a position where you got to wonder what you're going to do there. And I like, I've already talked about this. I like Chauncey a lot. And I think he's getting better and better with each passing day because he's learning on the job. But the work they've done in the second half of the season and the way he's cranked up the pressure with the wins and the success and the development of the young guys, I'm happy for Coach Billups because whether it's in Portland or elsewhere, he's coaching his ass off and he's put himself in a position to be elsewhere if it's not in Portland, which is what I'm hoping for. All right, we'll keep things rolling. The Godfather, Dwight Jane's going to join us coming up at 4:20. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino getting ready for the national title game. Your place to bet on college sports. The sports book is plush, comfy seating everywhere. Great place to sit down and watch the game. And right now the Gators are a 1.5-point favorite over the Cougars. It's coming up at 6. You got the Rip City Drive live from Spirit Mountain Casino on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I don't feel the need to give such secrets away. All right, Rip City Drive. Chad doing live here at Spirit Mountain Casino in the Sportsbook. Your place to bet on college sports, getting ready for the national title game. And I was just looking at a couple of posts from Paige Sporanic. She's getting in the Masters mood. I'm looking forward to the Masters this week. I'm going to have PGA Dave on here at some point to talk a little golf. So looking forward to the tournament, and I can't believe that Bryson DeChambeau is 20-1 odds right now. Now, I mentioned earlier I almost died last night when I tripped over one of those cement little curb stops in the parking lot. Somehow I got my hands out in front of me. Sean sometimes, not Sean, but Sean and Sandy, sometimes he gets a little bit too deep on the discussion. And I don't know, but he responded to me in regards to my fall. And he said, that's why I don't walk with my hands in my pockets. And if that ever happens and you can't get your hands out because you're carrying something, try and twist so his shoulder takes the hit instead of your face. Twist and roll over if you're quick enough, but that reaction would come natural to someone trained properly. Now, how many people walk around with their hands in their pockets? Isn't that a little bit weird?
Very.
I'm trying to think, how often do I walk? Like, if you're walking somewhere with purpose, like, how many people, like, if I saw someone, like, walking or strolling down the street, like, doing a little power walk or a speed walk, or if I saw someone walking, like, even here in Spirit Mountain Casino, trying to get from one end of the property to the other, and they have their hands in their pockets. Like, I don't know, it's just weird to me. Like, there's certain things, like this happened to me the other day. Like, I don't know what the rule is, but I'm sure this is a violation. But I went out to a dinner to celebrate my mom's 77th birthday. Had a great time. Isaac was there, Dad was there, Grandma was there, the whole thing. So it was great. And I went in to use the restroom towards the end of the evening, and I'm standing there at a stall. Thank God it had a divider. Like, you know, when you walk in, sometimes you got the divider, so it's like this little, I don't know, for you ladies out there, us dudes, sometimes the urinals don't have dividers, so you're just standing right next to a dude as you're unzipping. It's bizarre, right? Well, this restaurant had dividers, which I like because it gives me a little more privacy. So the guy violated one rule that I'm aware of. Like, if you walk into, here's how it works if you're a guy. Maybe you're a younger boy out there. Let me give you a little help here. If you walk into a public restroom and you're going to stroll up to the urinal, let's say you're at Moda Center or the airport or wherever. If you walk into a restroom and there's like 8 open urinals and there's like one other person who's using one urinal, if you line up right next to the guy when there's like 8 open urinals and you don't give any buffer zone, you're crazy. Like that is a violation on some level of something, right? That's just like code. That's like a guy code. You don't stand next to a guy who's, you know, peeing freely when you can stand way down the end of the line and give separation. It's just proper courtesy. It's like, look, man, I don't want to stand next to you. No offense. Just slide down. What are you doing next to me? There's like 8 open ones, right? Well, like, what are you doing? So that stuff drives me crazy. But this was like to a different level. Like, I've never had this happen before, but I just eyes forward, right? Like, I'm staring at the wall. I'll read whatever writing's on the wall, like for a good time, call such and such number. Even if it's blank or there's nothing in front of me, I just stare straight ahead. But I had that weird sensation, you know, where, and my vision's not any better, it's getting worse, but my peripheral's still okay. This guy that, like, he came in and stood next to me when they were open urinals, so he violated that code, no buffer zone. But I felt his head turn, and he looked at me. Like he turned his head and I could feel his eyes on my face as he was peeing and I was peeing. Now, part of me wanted to look over and be like, oh, what's up, man? Why are you looking at me? But I didn't do it. I just kept I knew he was looking at me. I just kept staring straight ahead. But you can't turn the dome. Like, if you're, one, you already violated the fact there's no buffer zone here. 2, you can't turn your head and try to make eye contact with me when I've got the da-da-da in my hand and I'm taking care of business, all right? And you're doing the same thing. Why are you looking at me? I got nothing going on over here. I don't want eye contact. I just want privacy, and I want to pretend like no one else is in the room while I'm taking care of business. And why are you doing that? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that for you youngsters out there, buffer zone, critical, and never turn your head and try to make any type of eye contact with another dude when you're both peeing. That's strange. I don't need someone asking me questions or trying to have conversation or any light banter. It's like, look, man, I don't like the public thing that's going on here. Can't we just pretend like no one else is in there? Just do what you got to do and get out of there. Buffer zone and no eye contact. And don't turn. I shouldn't feel your head turning to me. But why would you do that? So anyways, that's where I'm at on that. Violation on multiple levels, all right? So there you have it. That's my take on that. If you do that, you're crazy. And there's just people all the time, they're just violating little things. Like I had this person today, as I was walking down to the sports book, trying to make my way to do my show today here at Spirit Mountain. You ever been behind someone at a mall or in an establishment or wherever you're at, but they don't walk in a straight line. Now they zigzag. And they don't even know they're zigzagging, but they keep cutting you off. And I really like it when it's someone who's older and I have to be gentle with them. It's like, well, why are you zigzagging? What's up with the Z's? You're killing me right now. And you're trying to get around it, but every time you go to make the passing move, then they zig right in front of you. What's going on here? So there you have it. Just the little things that drive me crazy. I thought that the Prius in the left lane going below the speed limit on the freeway was bad, but I think the guy turning his head to try and make eye contact with me in the middle of what was going on, that's bizarre. And it's uncomfortable. And I don't like it. So I'm just asking for you guys out there that might think about doing that, don't do that. All right, there you go. That's my take on that. Joe Cronin has re-upped, got a multi-year deal with the Trailblazers. The Trailblazers got a big win yesterday over the Spurs, so they're continuing to play hard down the stretch, which is nice. And there you have it. So coming up at 4:20, the Godfather, Dwight James, will join us. And we'll get his take on Cooper Flagg. We'll get his take on Denny Avdia. And probably get into Chauncey Billups as well. But coming up next, I'm going to get into that incredible game we saw on Saturday with Houston and Duke. Certainly, Duke is Duke, and they're on TV more than Leave It to Beaver reruns. They melted down the stretch. Let me give you those stats one more time. 1 field goal in the final 10.5 minutes, no rebounds in the final 4 minutes, and they got outscored 28-11 in the final 11:34 of the game, and Houston closed on an 11-1 run to win it. It's wild. So we'll get to that next. Live at Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports from the sportsbook. You got the RipCity Drive with Chad Doing.
knocked away. Kniffel back outside. Proctor tosses it up. It's no good. The dream remains alive for the Houston Cougars.
I mean, just an amazing game. I've seen a lot of good college basketball games in the tournament, but that one right there revived my love of college basketball. What a game, what a finish, and what a comeback by the Houston Cougars. And for those of you out there who don't like Duke, you really love that comeback by the Cougars. The amazing part is that throughout most of the game, the first 30 minutes, the game was controlled by Duke and their freshmen, their young guys. They were the aggressor. They had better offense. They were moving the ball better. Every aspect of their game was just better than Houston, who looked like they were slow out of the gate. They were unsettled on offense. They couldn't make shots, and they never got comfortable until the second half. And Duke's defense was applying a lot of pressure. They were forcing turnovers, pushing the Cougars into mistakes, and it just looked like a game that Duke was going to control from start until finish. And then all of a sudden, Houston started to get comfortable. They started to play better offense. They had better spacing. They started to make a lot of shots. And they slowly continued to grind, and that's really the hallmark of a Kelvin Sampson coach team. Toughness, defense, never quit, and continue to fight, and they were able to put themselves into a position to win that game with the constant pressure that they applied. And I feel like with Houston, with the way they play and their aggressiveness, they just continue to come no matter what the situation is, and they eventually wear you down. And I think Duke got worn down over the course of time by the Houston Cougars and their pressure. And all of the things that we wondered about Duke with Cooper Flagg and the great freshman they had in John Shire this year, the biggest concern was lack of experience, lack of upperclassmen, lack of tournament experience, and would it come back to haunt them? And up until now, it had not. It wasn't an issue. But in that game against Houston, in the final few minutes of the game, it was a big-time issue. The most amazing stat to me is that in the final 4 minutes of that game, Duke did not have a single rebound. Houston got to every loose ball. They got to every rebound, and Duke's mistakes caught up with them. It was truly remarkable. Now, I want you to hear this. We'll hear from Cooper Flagg in just a moment on the shot that he got up there at the end of the game, and also areas where he felt like they could have been better that would have changed the outcome of the game. But first off, John Shire, head coach of Duke, I thought he handled himself with class when he talked about the game and how things played out. Take a listen.
The very first thing I want to say is how proud I am to coach these two guys next to me in our entire team. I mean, it's been a special ride that ended in a heartbreaking way. And frankly, the game, we did what we wanted to do. You know, I thought our guys followed the game plan, controlled the game. We had the lead for 35 minutes. We're winning by 6 with 1:15 to go. And they made plays, and you got to give them a ton of credit. We didn't make those plays, and you go from some of the most special moments in the tournament to the most heartbreaking loss. And I'm not about to feel sorry for 1 second. These guys have done an incredible job. It's heartbreaking. It's incredibly disappointing. There's a lot of pain that comes with this. That's what the tournament is all about. You know, you're an inch away from the national championship game. But I could not be more proud of these two guys next to me. We've done this thing differently. And what they've done at 18 and 19 years old, I couldn't fathom doing. Just incredible. But I do want to say Houston's a championship caliber team. We had a ton of respect for them. Obviously, we still do. Just really disappointed we couldn't make one more play down the stretch. But congratulations to them.
I got to be honest, I'm a huge fan of John Shire. What I learned about him, especially over the last month of the season and into the tournament, to get a chance to watch him coach the young guys. He built his team differently than the majority of the top teams in the country have, going with young guys, working with the superstar in Cooper Flagg. And not only that, but taking over a program that was run and coached by a legend, one of the very best to ever do it in Coach K. And the key is he was able to come in and he created that transition along with the help of Coach K, but he's put his own imprint on the program. He's not running it like Coach K. He's not recruiting like Coach K. He's not yelling at guys or coaching at guys like Coach K. He's doing it his way, which is what you want. You don't want a guy to come in and try to run the program like the guy before him. In order to have success, you've got to be able to have your own convictions, to be able to run the program the way that you see fit so that you can make sure you put yourself in the best chance or best position to have success. And Coach Shire's been able to do that. And what I love most is that he earned the respect of his players, including Cooper Flagg, which allowed him to coach Flagg just like he coached everyone else on the team. And when you can do that and have that type of gravitas to be able to coach the guys the same regardless of who they are, you're going to have good success. And I'm anxious to see what the process is going to be for John Shire moving forward after, a couple of difficult losses to stomach in the tournament, especially that collapse against Houston. Now, it was a collapse. I mean, they made a lot of mistakes. I thought there were a couple of bad calls by the officials, and it was a combination of Duke's failure to make plays and execute along with Houston's relentless pressure and the way they just continued to grind even, inside of a minute when it looked like the game was lost. It's impressive. Now, Cooper Flagg, who's going to be the number one pick in the draft and the first American-born white player to be taken number one overall in 44 years, which is pretty wild to think about. He talked about that last shot that came up short on the rim.
It's the play. Coach drew up, took it into the paint. Thought I got my feet set, rose up, left it short, obviously, but it's a shot I'm willing to live with in the scenario. Pulling up on the rim, trust the work that I put in.
Well, I didn't have any problem with the shot. I knew in that situation, at least with Houston and their defensive capabilities, that they weren't going to be able to get the best of looks, but he was able to, get to a position that he was comfortable with. He turned. I thought it was a good contest, but he just didn't get the shot to go in. And Houston was right there to gobble up the rebound and be in a position where they could take the lead or add to their lead, at the free throw line. But, it's Cooper Flagg. He's got the range and the length to be able to get that shot off. And I had no problem with the shot. He also talked about, with not much time to digest it, but where could they have, where does he wish they could have changed things that could have, turned the outcome of the game and Duke could have won? Take a listen.
Just communication. I think me and Sion messed up a switch. Got to get the ball in bounds, find whatever we had to do, just find a way to get the ball in bounds. But yeah, I think that was a big messed up communication play between me and Sion that led to a big three.
That's pretty good insight on the fly from a guy like Cooper Flagg in a very tough situation. But again, that shows to his character. He's coachable. He answers the tough questions, and he was able to do so in defeat. And that tells me a lot about the guy, about the man, about the player, about his character, and, just a small sliver of what he's going to become in the NBA. He's going to be a mega superstar. And he's a domestic product, which is going to make him wildly popular. He's going to be great for the league. Now, we heard from Cooper Flagg. We heard from Duke head coach John Shire. But let's check in with Houston head coach Kelvin Sampson, who's been very successful for an extended period of time with great stops at Washington State, at Oklahoma, and now he's getting the job done at Houston. Here's what he had to say after the game about his guys and, of course, all the talk about Duke, but his team continued to fight and grind, and they found a way to get it done.
No one ever loses at anything as long as you don't quit. Now, when you quit, then I don't care if you've lost. Our thing in our timeouts, we've been here before. It's not like we were down 20. It's not like we were playing great. We felt like if we could get it close enough to put some game pressure on them, then something good could happen. But all the credit, all the glory goes to God, and all the credit goes to these unbelievable young men I get to coach. I'm so blessed I get to coach these kids.
You talk about these kids. You've talked all season long about the experience factor. A guy like this, Juwan, what they did down the stretch, how lucky is it to have these guys on your team in these moments?
Well, it's lucky to have them, but it's not lucky that they do what they do, because that's work. They trust their work. They trust their teammates. I hear what people say. Duke this, Duke that. Duke's great. John Shire is awesome, but don't sleep on Houston. Don't sleep on Houston. We weren't 34-4 playing in the Toy Poodle League. We were 19-1 in the Big 12. Playing in the Big 12 helped us. Shout out to my Big 12 brethren, Coach Brett Yormark, and all the great coaches in the Big 12.
Well, there you have it. The Houston Cougars will match up with the Florida Gators. All the talk about Cooper Flagg, and rightfully so because he's a megastar. But I'll tell you what, I really like watching Walter Clayton Jr. play for Florida. I mean, that guy is absolutely clutch. He's great with the ball in his hands. He's got a soft touch around the rim. He's a creative shot maker. He's just cool, man. That guy is so smooth and so cool under pressure. I just like watching him operate. It's going to be a heck of a game tonight. But if I had to, make a pick, I think Houston's like a 1.5-point underdog. I'm going to go with the Cougars. They got the job done against Duke. I would much rather play Florida than I would Duke, but they're just the type of team that looks like they've got whatever that is to be able to get the job done tonight. Their rebounding, their toughness, they're relentless, and I just think they're going to get it done. I think they're going to, fight, scratch, and claw and find a way to get a victory tonight. That's how I see it playing out. There's no question in my mind because they're that tough. And Kelvin Sampson finally will get over the hump. He's been close, but hasn't been able to get it done, and I think this is going to be the year for, Kelvin Sampson. I love their defense, their rebounding, and just the continued fight that we saw down the stretch against Duke. I mean, that was super impressive. Super impressive. One quick thing before we got the Godfather Dwight James coming up here in a couple of minutes, but one other thing I wanted you to hear. The Trailblazers got a win yesterday at home against the San Antonio Spurs, and it was a game where multiple guys were out, but they got, some of the stars to show up. 21 points, 10 rebounds for Shaedon Sharpe. He remains aggressive and continues to attack. 23 points and 10 boards for Tamani Kamara, and they got 18 off the bench from Chris Murray, all 18 of his points coming in the second half. But take a listen to this. Tamani Kamara talking about communication and leadership. With so many guys out, he was one of the guys that really tried to step up and be a vocal leader in that game against San Antonio. Here's what he had to say about that.
Oh, yeah, I think it's something that I've been trying to do throughout the season, be a little bit more vocal. And I think as a team, that's a emphasis that we're trying to do, talk to each other a little bit more, not only on the court, but off the court, where we have timeouts or in the locker room, being able to talk about things. I feel like we're a very quiet team, and I feel like it's something that all of us need to get better at, and I think everybody's starting stepping up.
Man, how can you not like Tamani Kamara? We knew coming into the season he was a great defender. He was last year, but he stepped that up several notches, arguably the best defender and on-ball defender in the NBA now. And offensively, his three-point shot has gotten better. And now he's added that move where he'll put the ball on the floor and attack the rim on a closeout. So he's doing so many different things. But he talked about his shot after the game against San Antonio and, where he's at now. He hit 4 threes in the game, but, the work that's required to continue to get to where he wants to be because he doesn't want to be known as a one-way player. He wants to be known as a guy that can do it on both ends.
Yeah, I just got to keep shooting it. There's times where, you don't see the ball going for the first 3, first 4, and then it's discouraging. Yeah, you just got to keep shooting. We're in the NBA, a lot of talent on the floor, so we know it can drop. It's just you got to fight with your mental. But I feel like my shot keep improving, something I feel like I still can improve a lot on, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? The Blazers, exceeded expectation by a country mile this year. But most importantly, we've seen flashes from the young guys, Scoot, Shaedon, Klingon, Tamani, and Denny. That's a pretty good foundation to have moving forward as the Blazers continue to, construct what they want to accomplish. So 3 more games to go. Utah on Thursday, the Golden State Warriors on Friday, and they'll close out against the Los Angeles Lakers Sunday at Moda Center, tip-off at 12:30. All right, the Godfather Dwight James is coming up next. We'll talk about Cooper Flagg and get his take on Flagg's game and what he's going to bring to the NBA, what he thought about the ending of that Houston-Duke game. And then we'll talk to him about the Trailblazers, what went down on Chicago, his read on that. And then Denny Avdia, what is he? Is he a number 1? Is he a 2? And more importantly, how do you know if a guy can be a good 2 next to a true number 1 in a season where he's had total freedom to do whatever he wants in terms of shot making, creation, and everything else? So we'll talk about that with the Godfather. I'm here at Spirit Mountain Casino, which is your place to bet on college sports. The sports book is plush. Great seating. It's Vegas style. You can get in on the action. Tip-off is coming up at 6 with Florida and Houston in the title game down in San Antonio. But it is the place to hang out and bet on college sports. And you'll be able to get in on the action with the Masters coming up this weekend. They'll have action for the Kentucky Derby. Spirit Mountain Casino is great, man. It's been here for quite some time. It's a great establishment with a beautiful lodge, recently renovated. It's clean. And the people down here are awesome. But the sports book is fabulous. The video wall that I'm sitting under right now, it's got games of all sorts on. You can request a game to be put on a screen, and we'll have the title game rolling tonight. So get down here and join me. The Godfather is coming up next. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing live from Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. next destination, which of course is be the number one pick. Just your overall thoughts on his play and what you saw.
Okay, Chad, you know how long I've been around. I mean, I wasn't there. I wasn't pulling the basketballs out of the peach baskets, but I've been around a while. I would say he's one of the best prospects I've ever seen, giving his multitude of skills and his age. He's going to fill out. He's going to get bigger and stronger, and he's going to get better. He should be in high school right now, and he's so far ahead of the curve in the fact that you just can't find prospects normally, even after 3 or 4 years of college, who can do all the things you need to do in basketball: pass, play defense, block shots, steal the ball, make shots, get shots for other people. He does everything. He's just a phenomenal prospect. I would say a better prospect than Magic Johnson was coming out of college. Wow. I'm totally sold on him. Partly because the way he attacks the defensive end, and he's a really good defender, and he steals the ball and he blocks shots. That's what defenders do, and you can tell he's got leadership qualities. He's almost too good to be true. I mean, I can't believe how good he is, honestly.
Yeah, he really is terrific. Yeah, were you okay with the final shot he got? It came up short, in that play where you knew he was going to get heavily defensed by Houston, but he did get a good look. What did you think about the shot?
Yeah, I think, it had to be him taking the shot. If he doesn't take the final shot, people are going to wonder why. And they put the ball in his hands. That's what you're supposed to do. He might have been able to get a better shot. The problem in the college game right now is you can try to do an up and under or some ball fake and get a guy in the air, but you can't depend on getting a foul call anymore in college because it's a butcher shop out there. I mean, it's like a slaughterhouse. There's so many fouls that don't get called, and the physicality of the college game is above the NBA game. And I don't understand why they've made the decision. And they've done the same thing in the NBA. They don't call as many fouls as they used to, so it gets more physical. And players are going to get hurt, and there's going to be fights and all that stuff that we used to have in the old days. But a lot of people like the game played that way. They're not at the foul line as much. So I kind of excuse Cooper for not getting too deep into the lane where he might get hit or something, because I don't know that there were going to be any calls. So, yeah, I was fine with that. And I would judge him on the last 2 minutes of the game or even the last 10 minutes of the game. His skills go way beyond that. You don't have to be a basketball savant to understand how good he is. He's amazing.
You know what else I like, too, is when you talk to coaches or people that have been around him, the biggest criticism I hear of Cooper Flagg is that he's too unselfish.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you could make that criticism. In fact, in that game, he gave the ball up to guys who, weren't as good as him. And you'd like to think that maybe he should take more shots, but he's being a good teammate. And that's one of his great qualities. He's not going to have any trouble with teammates. They're going to bow down to him because he's going to keep them happy. He'll get them the ball. And he got guys good shots in that game. They didn't always make them, but his gravity is such that he attracts double, triple teams, and especially in the NBA where the court's more wide open, there's defensive 3 seconds. He's going to have more room to operate in the NBA, and he's going to get people really good shots. They can play off him all night long.
One thing I've seen throughout the year, and especially in the tournament, is John Shire can coach him like anybody else on the team. And I'm wondering for NBA executives, for general managers, for coaches, when they see that, the coachability, is that a trait that they enjoy in the NBA?
Oh, for sure, Chad. To be able to coach him hard allows you to coach other players hard. They turn around and say, God, he's yelling at Cooper. He's certainly going to yell at me, and it really gives you license to coach everybody hard, which I believe the best coaches in the league coach pretty hard. They have demands, and they expect their demands to be met. And in this case, I think that's one of the things that makes him attractive is his ability to be coached, his ability to allow coaches to operate. Look, I thought Duke was really well coached. I have to say this too, and I've liked Kelvin Sampson since he was at Washington State. He's a great defensive coach, and they play good defense. Offensively, though, they're not on the same planet as Duke. They just dribble the ball around a little bit, might set a high pick once in a while, but basically just dribble around until somebody gets a shot. And they made shots in that game, some amazing shots in that game, and that's why they won. And I believe it was a huge upset. People aren't playing it that way. If they played 10 times, I believe Duke would win 9 out of 10. At the offensive end, there's just no comparison between the two teams. But, Houston made great shots. They made them when they counted. They even got free throw production from guys who aren't good free throw shooters. And, maybe they're destined to win it all. I'm not sure. It's going to be a good final game, I think.
The craziest stat from the game was that Duke didn't pull down a rebound in the final 4 minutes of that game. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. There weren't too many to be had because Houston kept making all their shots. Yeah. And then when Duke took a shot, they weren't in position to get an offensive rebound. Gosh, so I like Duke's team. I think that Cooper's not the only prospect. There's a couple other guys that are going to be NBA players too, and it's certainly, I think, a talent-rich draft coming up this year.
Well, you know what's amazing about Cooper Flagg, too? He's from Maine, and I don't know if you know of any great athletes from Maine, but I certainly haven't heard of any. I pulled up a list. We have Joan Benoit, Bill Swift, Cindy Blodgett, Seth Westcott, Simon Dumont, Eric Weinrich, and Beatrice Kyle, none of who I've ever heard of in my life. And yet Cooper Flagg is from Maine. That's like the East Coast version of French Lick or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill Swift, he was a pretty good pitcher, and he lived up to his name. He threw pretty hard.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm surprised there aren't a few NHL players in there because they play pretty good hockey up in that part of the world. I'm a little surprised, but, yeah, you're right. There's no way. Especially it's most players now are coming from warm weather climates where you can play outside all the time, and you're not doing that in Maine.
No.
And he was lucky. His dad played in college, and then somehow, I don't know how yet, but there was a connection made with the Celtics because he was able to get down to Boston and play in the summers with a lot of those guys. He played with NBA players and has been for a long time, I guess. And then he hit the genetic lottery, too. If you look, his mother is not a tall person. His dad is taller than average. But how does this kid become 6'9"? Well, stuff happens, That's just what happens. But he has all the skills of a 6'3" guy. And he's just – there's no way to quantify it because I can't think of anybody to compare him to, Chad. I really can't. He's got so many skills, and there are guys with his offensive skills, but they didn't combine the kind of defense he plays.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch him play. The other part that's amazing, he's about to become the first American-born white player drafted number 1 overall in the NBA since the great Kent Benson by the Milwaukee Bucks 44 years ago.
Yeah. There's nobody in the listening audience under the age of about 50 who knows who Kent Benson was. Played for Bob Knight at Indiana. He was a 6'11" center and actually not a bad player, not a star, not an all-star, but a decent enough center in that time. But you're right. It's just not been happening, and that's why this whole thing is. He's a unicorn. If there's a unicorn, it's him. There's just nobody like him.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, we're talking to the Godfather, Dwight James, here in the Rip City Drive. On Friday, the Chicago Bulls, the Blazers finished up their road trip in Chicago, and they had gone on a 15-2 run and cut the deficit in that game to 2 with 2:45 remaining. Now, before the 3 by Banton, which cut it to 2, it had been a 12-2 run, and there were 3 minutes remaining in the game, timeout on the floor. And, I'm watching the game, and I'm keeping notes as I'm, doing my work. And I looked up, and I was like, wait a second, where's Shaedon Sharpe and Denny Avdia? And it took me a moment to process, and I was like, oh, because the Kings had won earlier in the evening at Charlotte, which meant their play-in chances were remote at best. And then I realized what was going on. The Blazers were looking at a way to, I guess, protect their lottery position, knowing that at that point in time, the chances of the play-in were out. And then later on, the next day or two, I got information they also had Avdia and Sharp on a minute restriction. But, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you wanted to honor their competition and allow them to challenge for the play-in, and then that became an impossibility, why not make sure that you secure your spot in the lottery position to give yourself the best chance to move up into the top 4 and to possibly land Cooper Flag? I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't either, Chad. I've been an advocate of tanking all year, and I've been an anti-tank guy my whole career in the media business. But when you don't really have a chance of making the playoffs in the first place, you're going to be in the lottery somewhere. You might as well try to get the best pick you can. And I think in this case especially, it was confirmed, and they did take the handcuffs off. They let these guys compete for the play-in, the playoffs, and all that. They turned them loose there for a while, and we saw good results, and I think enough good results to be somewhat optimistic about the future. They have discovered some players on this team, and that's great. I also think now what I would do, Chad, and I don't know what they're doing because I'm not listening at the keyhole there at Moda Center, but I think what I would do is I would like to see some of these guys play on their own without support from the main guys. It's like tonight. Let's see what Klingon does, without Anthony Simons on the floor to help him, without other guys on the floor to help him, Denny Abdia, all that. Let's see what he can do. Let's see if Shaden Sharp in a game like tonight can take over as the guy without worrying about somebody else getting all the shots. Let's see how aggressive he gets. You can use this time to find out these questions because you're not worried if you win the game or not. Yeah, you're going to win some games. They won a game. They beat the Spurs. That's fine. But you don't need to win right now, and it's probably better if you don't. So what you do is you play various combinations together. You bring up a guy like Rupert. Let him have some minutes. Let's see what he's got, because you got decisions ahead with a lot of these guys. Their cap hit is still pretty high. They're going to have to make decisions on trades and just letting people go to get their salaries down a little bit and have some cap room and some freedom on what they can do. So I think all of those things are on the table right now, and I know Chauncey Billups is smart enough to take advantage of them, and I think this is a great time to just see how everything lays out for them. And I'm not sure how many more games they're going to win, but it doesn't matter. And now that they're not going to make the play-in, get the best pick you can get, right?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I did want to ask you about Denny Avdia. I'm a huge fan. I know that you really like his game as well. What is he? Is he a number one Godfather, or is he like a number two next to a true number one? Like, he's so versatile, and he's proving to be a better scorer than I even thought he was coming over from Washington. But what is he?
That's a great question now, because I don't think we've seen his full development. This is really his first year of getting the ball in his hands and being a guy that the team depended on to score, pass, make plays, all of those things, and he rose to the occasion. We don't know how much better he's going to get in that role. I'd say for now, what we saw this season, he's at least a number 3 on a championship team, maybe a number 2 at some point. I don't know if he'll be a number 1, but I think it's possible, Chad. He's got skills that could make him that way. Is he quick enough? Is he durable enough? We got to see all those things. But, you kind of like what we saw this year. There was tremendous development in him, and I remember him last year. He was a good player last year. When they made the deal, I thought, yeah, they've added another good player. Did I think that he was this good? Heck no. I had no idea he was going to be the kind of guy who would go out and get triple-doubles, score 30 points during a triple-double. No way I thought that. So he's been surprising. How much better can he get? We'll see. As they add better players to this roster, it'll subtract some of those statistics, because it always does. He's got free reign right now, and not a lot of other guys around him who are going to, outscore him or do other things. He's really the backup playmaker now. He makes plays for people. And as the team gets better, he may not have to do that. We'll see, though. It depends on how aggressive he is. I'll tell you what else. It depends on how good he wants to be, because it's there for him, Chad. He's got some real skills. And it's just, is that fire burning there? It kind of looks like it is. It looks like he wants to be really good. And if that's the case, he might be really good. We just don't know yet. And I think that's the same thing I'm still saying about some of their other players. They look like they could be pretty good, but we don't know yet. And that's one of the things about the season. I wish I knew a little more about Shaden Sharp, a little more about Scoot, and a little more about Klingon, because we still haven't seen him in a starting role consistently with the pressure on it to come through and make plays and play winning basketball.
All right, one more question for you, Godfather, and this is about Avdia. You and I were talking over the phone this weekend, and you made a very good point with Avdia where, for teams, like if they were to add, like let's say they get fortunate and add Cooper Flagg in the draft or any type of true number one, well, you don't know how a guy's going to be in a role next to a true number one, because Avdia has had a season of freedom where he's been able to, choose freely on decision making and be able to take the shots he wants. And if you dial back that type of usage, you're not sure how that's going to translate next to a true one. So how do teams figure that out when they're looking at a guy like Avdia to know how he would match up or pair up with a true one?
That's a really tough thing to figure. And I think he has the mentality to fit. I think that was his mission coming to Portland, was he wanted to fit. And he figured out a role, and he fit. There's no doubt he fit really well. But would he fit alongside a number one? I don't know, because, I didn't know how it was going to work in Milwaukee when Dame went to Milwaukee. And it turns out, it hasn't really fit as well as people thought, because Dame was always a number one here. And then he goes there. He's not going to be a number one there, because that's the job of Giannis, who's already won a championship. That's a tough adjustment for Damian Lillard to make. Good point. He's had the ball in his hands all the time. So what in another year, will he do that? Will they have the patience to wait and see? I don't know what's going to happen there, but it's a good example of what can happen with players when they change their roles and responsibilities. And I think in this case, Denny Avdia is always going to fit. He's always going to find a way to fit. Will his numbers be the same? No. And look, if they somehow get lucky enough to get Cooper Flagg, see, he's going to play power forward. I'm calling him a PowerPoint, because he's going to be a power forward playing point guard. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a number two, even a number one late in games distributor. There is no question about it. He makes players better, and he knows how to pass the ball. He's a great passer, especially for a guy who's going to play power forward. Mm-hmm. Is he going to have a little trouble defensively? Yeah, until he gets some more weight on him. But he's 19 years old? Mm-hmm. He's going to get so much bigger and stronger over the years. It's going to be so much fun to watch his development, and I hope it's in Portland.
I agree. The Godfather, Dwight Jaynes, with me here on the RipCity Drive. Well, Godfather, a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, and we'll get a chance to talk soon, because I'm sure there'll be some changes to talk about with the Trailblazers coming up with the offseason. But enjoy the title game, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yes, sir. It's always a lot of fun to be on with you, Chad. Thanks.
All right, big thanks to the Godfather, Dwight Jaynes. We're going to keep things rolling down here at Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports as we get ready for the championship game between Florida and Houston. If you're on your way down, tip-off is coming up right around 6 or just after. You can get in on the action. You can get your wagers in, and you can hang out and watch the game, which is a great place to do it. They've got great food right across the way here at 10 Barrel Brewing. You can grab a bite and a brew. They've got the stadium bar. Just get on down here to Spirit Mountain Casino, and we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, it's now 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? We got breaking news for the Trailblazers announced this morning. General Manager Joe Cronin has agreed to a multi-year contract extension following the Trailblazers' strong finish in the second half of the season. You can listen to my conversation with Sean Hiken, our Trailblazer insider from Rose Garden Report. You can always podcast on the iHeartRadio app or at RipCityRadio.com. Trailblazers over the Spurs yesterday, 120-109. Portland is now guaranteed to have a winning record at home for the first time since the 2021 season. Tamani Kamara, 23 points and 10 rebounds. Shaedon Sharpe, a double-double, 21 points and 10 boards. 3 games left for the Blazers. Next up, Utah Wednesday night, Salt Lake City. Tip-off at 6. Our coverage will start at 4 with Blazers Game Day hosted by Chris Burkhardt. Tonight, NCAA title game. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino getting ready for the championship with Houston and Florida. Gators right now a 1.5-point favorite. Tip-off coming up at 6.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I feel almost reborn today after surviving my near-death experience last night, tripping over the curb stop in the parking lot. Golf season is officially 1 week away. 3 games left in the Trailblazer season. I am in the midst of 41 straight days of work with no day off. My next day off will be on Saturday before the home finale against the LA Lakers. And then it's on. I can't believe it. The season is such a grind, with so many games and so many different things going on that when it finally gets here, it's weird. It's like the season ends, and you're excited about the season ending because of all the work you put in. But then I go through a 2 or 3 day period of, I feel like a loss or some type of grief. It's really a bizarre emotional ride because you go from doing all the work, covering the games, being around a certain group of people, and the very next day it's over. It's like the last day of school, and that's the way it'll be on Sunday afternoon when it's all said and done, and then Monday when, work and the whole situation changes. But I'll be able to slide into a golf mode real quick. So I'm excited about golf season. We got the Masters coming up this weekend. Right now, not a surprise, but Scottie Scheffler remains the prohibitive favorite to win the tournament. You can get Oberg right now at 20-1 odds. I think Bryson has dropped. He's now 16-1 to win the tournament, but the Masters coming up this weekend, and we've got the championship game coming up tonight with Duke and with Florida. Here's a question I have for you about Cooper Flagg. Do you think maybe it's better that he lost the semifinal game to Houston? I mean, long term, is it going to be better for him? And the reason why I asked the question is because we've heard other great players talk about big-time defeats. Trying to get over the hump, but not being able to get over the hump and having to go to work and try and figure out a way to get over the team that's in front of you. And I wonder for Cooper Flagg if that loss to Houston is going to power him as he continues to press forward. Because he's going to be reminded about that forever. And that was an all-time meltdown and collapse by Duke where they didn't have a field goal in the final 10.5 minutes of the game. They had 1 field goal in the final 10.5 minutes, no rebounds in the final 4 minutes of the game, and they were outscored 28-11 in the final 11:34. It's unbelievable. I mean, Houston closed in on an 11-1 run to win that game. That was a wild scene. But, I remember Michael Jordan, had difficulty early on as he was learning how to win in the postseason, with his young Bulls against the Celtics, and then, a couple of embittering losses to the Pistons, and then finally got over the hump. But, he's talked about how those losses in those series, when you work so hard to get to that point, and you got a team that just won't get out of your way, and you've got to find a way to solve that riddle, that it drives you to more work, It drives you to better conditioning. It drives you to every single detail that you would need to be able to find a way to solve the riddle and win a championship. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson did the same thing to each other, where Larry Bird said before that those losses to the Lakers, it powers you through the offseason to go and get to work, right? So I'm anxious to see how Cooper Flagg, who obviously was raised around the game, he's got the right attitude and mentality. You can coach him. I wonder if that loss is going to do some good for him as he makes the next step to the NBA. And he's not going back to Duke. I don't care who is going to have the rights to draft him, whether it's Washington or Utah or whoever. He's not going back. Because no matter how much you make in NIL money, it pales in comparison to getting on the clock for that max extension once you come off the rookie contract. And that's where the big, big dollars are made. And the difference with Cooper Flagg, even though he's young, he's NBA ready right now. He's got the body for it. He's got the game, the skill level. He can compete against NBA players and have great success. And so I'm just excited to see him. But I wonder if that loss may actually do some good for him. The crazy thing is about these one-and-dones in college now is, he had one shot. And John Shire had one shot with that group, with Cooper Flagg, and the great youngsters that he had on that roster. Because Cooper Flagg's going to jump to the NBA now, and that's it. So it's tough when you know that you got one shot to make it all right and to get over the hump. But the problem is, and I think I heard Dan Hurley talking about this today, and it makes a lot of sense, that, because Duke, they played in the ACC, and they dominated the competition this year basically from start up until the loss to Houston. And what that meant is that you get involved in a lot of blowout games. You're dominating the teams in your conference. You're not really truly being tested in the situation that we saw on Saturday against Houston. So what that means is, because you're not being tested, you're not being battle tested, for a team like Houston that's got more experience and has gone through, the ringer in terms of, some grinders, some tough games, some tight games. Well, what happens is that, if you're Duke and all of a sudden you've got Houston that just won't let up and won't give up and they continue to battle, if you haven't been in those situations all year and all of a sudden you're in the middle of that situation, think about how hard it is to get an inbound pass made without turning it over if you haven't faced it all year. Or the pressure that you feel in the tournament to step up and knock down the front end of a 1-and-1 when you haven't been in that situation all year. Or grabbing that key rebound or getting to the loose ball or not making the right play at the right time because the game's moving too fast. And the moment you're not accustomed to because you haven't been in it all year. And I think the inexperience and Duke having not been tested in those type of moments throughout the year, you don't think it's going to be a problem until it becomes a problem. And we saw those issues pop up in that game against Houston. And I think for Cooper Flagg, he was great throughout the game. The final 2 minutes, not so much. He missed out on a rebound. He came up short on the shot that he took right there at the end, which would have given Duke the lead. The miscommunication that he's talked about, on the three-pointer that Houston was able to make that got them a step closer to being able to make that comeback a reality. So those are all the things that were going down. But I really like Cooper Flagg, and I like his mentality. And, he talked about that final shot and what he thought.
This is the play. Coach drew up, took it into the paint. Thought I got my feet set, rose up, left it short, obviously. But, it's a shot I'm willing to live with in the scenario. Pulling up on the rim, trust the work that I put in.
I was just surprised that Houston played him straight up because you knew he was going to get the ball, and they chose to play him straight up. That took some balls, and he got a good look. I don't know what you thought, but when he got position and he elevated to turn, he was close enough to where I thought that shot was going to go in. And it was online. It just came up a little bit short. I have no problem with the look, the shot, and I'm just glad that Duke got it in his hands because that's who you want to have the ball in that situation. He's your go-to guy. He's your number one. He's the best player in the country. And he just didn't get the shot to go down. He also was asked, and it's tough right after a game when you haven't had a chance to really, put your thoughts together or look at the film, but he was asked, what could have done or what they could have done differently to get over the hump.
Just communication. I think me and Sion messed up a switch. Got to get the ball in bounds, find whatever we had to do, just find a way to get the ball in bounds. But yeah, I think that was a big messed up communication play between me and Sion that led to a big three.
Yeah. That's a pretty good assessment by Cooper Flagg. But I like him. He's coachable. He's accountable. He answered the tough questions in a very difficult moment. And now he can move on and, in the words of LeBron, take his talents to the NBA. And I can't wait to watch him. But I think tonight with Houston, Florida's got the material, and they've got the explosiveness to be able to win. Pistol right now, he is on fire. But with Houston, they just have a certain connection as a team. They're more physical than what you're going to be. They're willing to do the little things that are necessary, meaning fly around, get on the floor for a loose ball, grab a rebound. They'll do whatever it takes. And their defense and their intensity and the way that they play, it's tough. They're a good example of a team that's taken on the personality of their coach. They play like Kelvin Sampson coaches, man. They're tough. And Kelvin Sampson's a demanding dude. But his players have responded. I like that group. They scrap. That is a tough, tough basketball team. And I really think that, we see this in the NFL, right, when you got a physical team that likes to run the football and really try to kick your butt at the line of scrimmage. You think but you don't know until you actually line up and see it. So I'm anxious to see how Florida handles the early parts of that game, with the pressure that Houston is certainly going to apply and the way they're going to come after them. Like, how do you respond to that? Are they going to be prepared for that? And will they be able to limit the opportunities that Clayton Jr. has to get to his spots? He's got a very creative way with himself on shot making, the ability to absorb contact and hit from all angles. He's been fun to watch in the tournament. And he's one of those guys where, he's kind of made his own way, where I think before the year began, I don't even think he was projected to be taken in the NBA draft, but I think now he's being projected as like a late first rounder. So his play and the way he's continued to get after it, he's made a name for himself, and he's been able to perform on the big stage of the tournament. Now he's creating opportunities, which is pretty cool to see. So I know Florida's got the material. I just think that Houston's going to find a way to grind it out tonight. They're tough. They are tough. They're a 1.5-point dog to Florida, but Houston and their defense, I just like teams that I know are resourceful in those situations on a championship stage. Defense, rebounding, toughness, and they're going to get physical with Florida. And I want to see if Florida can move and run. And it's been great. That BYU-Houston game was terrific, and I've enjoyed a lot of the games in the tournament. I don't know if that's because of Cooper Flagg or some of the star power. Maybe it's because we've had, the best of the best, the 4 number 1 seeds in the tournament, but it's produced a couple of good games so far. Auburn and Florida was great, and Houston and BYU was a classic, and we'll see if tonight's game can be the same. The problem is with Houston is that they ugly things up just a little bit, just a tad. And so they make the game, they pull you into their style of play. And that's what you got to try to do, is resist not being pulled into their style. It's tough, but you got to find a way to get it done. All right, if you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620, that's the telephone number. Or you can find me on X, at Chad and RipCity. 3 games to go in the Trailblazers season. They won't be back in action until the game coming up on Wednesday. They're in Salt Lake City to meet the Jazz. That game will tip off at 6. We'll have game day starting at 4. And don't forget, every game streams live on the iHeartRadio app. We have one more Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up tomorrow. And there you have it. That's what's going on. We'll come back, and I want to talk about Joe Cronin and the extension he signed. And then we'll hear from a couple of the players from yesterday's game, Trailblazers over the Spurs at Moda Center. But I appreciate your time. Title game's coming up tonight. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports. Right now, the Gators are a 1.5-point favorite over Houston for the championship game, which will tip off at 6 o'clock. So come on down. If you're on your way down, I'll see you when you get down here for the title game tonight from San Antonio with Houston and Florida. All right, you got the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Well, it's too bad Kent dropped off. He wanted to talk about Duke in the final 10 minutes of that game, but he's not there. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Joining me now is the man who's going to have Courtside Monday coming up here at 6 o'clock, my man Chris Burkhardt. What's up, B?
Hey, how we doing?
Fabulous, man. I'm still trying to get over that comeback by Houston. The numbers are amazing, but Duke with one field goal in the final 10.5 of the game, and then they didn't have a rebound in the final 4 minutes, and Houston was able to come back scoring and outscoring Duke 28-11 in the final 11:34 of the game. I still can't get over it. It was wild.
Hey, that's what a championship team does, man. The only thing that irritates me about this is now everyone's talking about that over the back foul on Cooper Flagg as if that was what decided the game. It wasn't Duke choking it away the entire second half of the second half. I mean, come on now.
That was a horrific call,
It
but
was.
You know, I look at the other situations. Cooper Flagg, and he talked about it after the game, the miscommunication which led to an open three on a switch where they failed to get the job done. They didn't grab a rebound. They couldn't make the front end of a 1-and-1. They just didn't handle themselves well. Cooper Flagg didn't have a good final couple of minutes of the game, but Houston, they made all the plays that they had to make. All the plays Duke didn't make at the end of that game, Houston made and got the job done.
They did. I mean, as the saying goes, right? Big-time players make big-time plays, right? And a couple of those step-back threes getting where they needed to go. I mean, that's what March Madness is all about, though. You just sit there at the edge of your seat for two teams that you really don't care about, and you just get hyped.
Well, the one thing I did love about the tournament is just watching Cooper Flagg in action. Like, he's got all the skills that you want, Burkhardt. He's coachable. He's super smart, high IQ. A big body, super strong. I can't believe he should be a senior in high school. Like, I don't really see a weakness in his game. I can't wait to see him on the NBA level.
No, it's scary because if he joins the NBA today and this is his ceiling, like he doesn't improve a lick, he's still a rotational NBA player. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to go make a difference right now on any team. And then you couple that with the fact that he's this young and he's going to get so much better. I mean, this is a scary, scary prospect. I mean, yeah, he misses that shot late, but you look at how he was able to create his space, and he got a decent look, right? Like, he comes in there, gets a little spin move. I mean, he's got a bag. He's got talent on both sides of the floor. I mean, I'm excited to see where he goes and get a chance to watch him.
All right, today we got the news this morning. Joe Cronin has agreed to a multi-year extension with the Portland Trailblazers. What were your thoughts when you got the news? Were you surprised that they made the announcement today? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was a little surprised that's news we got today, but I like it. I think Joe's been doing a fine job. I mean, he comes in, he has to clean up the previous regime, right? And he's done a good job of flipping that roster. He's got them in a spot where financially everyone talks about their bad deals, right? The Jeremy Grant money and DA and Ant or what have you, but he still got them to a spot where they're not over the first apron. They still got moves they can make this summer. And he gets Damian Lillard out and uses all those assets, ends up getting Denny Avdia in, gets Tumani Kamara thrown in the deal, right? Shane Sharp in the draft. Donovan Klingen's looking good. Like, I think he's done a pretty good job, all things considered. There's no GM out there, Chad, who's 100%, right? Who goes up to the plate and hits 100% and nothing but home runs. You're going to have whiffs. You're going to have misses too. But I think Joe has actually been doing a pretty good job, all things considered. I want to see him continue to build this thing.
Yeah, I was talking with someone today, and, I think for Joe, like, he's done a lot of really good things, but don't you think that his story is going to be told really over the next, few months leading up to the draft and depending on what type of pick they get in the upcoming draft? And then also after that, really the most important thing is the players that he's got on the roster who are vets, what he gets in return for Ant, Grant, Matisse Thybulle, DeAndre Ayton, and Robert Williams III, like what he's able to get in return for that group of veterans that we would expect at some point in the near future to be moved, like that's going to be a big part of his story too, and what they're going to be able to put together long term.
Yeah, Chad, I agree there too. And the thing is, there's a lot of fans, if you're looking at social media, who are like, I just don't understand why you did this now. You could have given him this summer, and then you could have talked to him. Well, here's the thing. In my view, Chad, is the good part about giving a GM money is it doesn't impact your salary cap. You know what I'm saying? So if come April next year he hasn't got the job done, you can cut bait with him, no harm, no foul. But you can't tell me that if you're Joe Cronin and you have these moves to make, that it is not a vote of confidence that the team came to you and said, hey, we want you to be our guy. Now go get this done, right? It's a little bit easier, I think, for him to go through that rather than, oh, my gosh, my entire job depends on if I'd make this or not. It's more of they trust me to get the job done, and now I got to go do it. And I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Joe Cronin and his staff, and I love the moves that they made. I mean, heck, just look at the I was talking with Sean Hyken earlier, and he made a good point. His resistance to the pressure to deal Dame to Miami and holding out for a better deal, and then being very firm and making sure they got Tamani Kamara. I mean, that was a genius move. So you take that, and then they go out and go after a guy that they saw in Denny Abdia that they really liked, and they bring him in, and he's been nothing but fabulous. And then you get the 3 draft picks, which are developing. Donovan Klingen's been really good in his rookie year. And then you've got both Shaden and, Scoot Henderson who are turning a corner. So, I mean, I look at the young talent. I'm like, okay, now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of what his vision is. And now I can't wait to see what he's able to add to it.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I know when you look at those guys, right, you look at what Tu's doing, you look at Denny, and you look at how these guys are starting to play together. I think for the first time this year, you really got an idea of what kind of roster he wanted to build. He's looking for size, looking for versatility, looking for guys who can play and guard multiple positions, right? And so that's good. And now you have an idea of what he can go and get moving forward. You still got pieces you can get bring assets in with over the summer. Whatever you get in the draft, like if they end with the 9th pick, is that something they're going to use for a pick? Or is that something like, hey, maybe that's incentive for you to take on the Jeremy Grant contract and give me something back in return? Like there's still a lot of moving parts here. And I think he's going to get it done. And again, the young pieces are the part I'm loving right now. The guys that we're all falling in love with over the last few weeks are all the guys that he went out and brought in. And people can say, Chad, well, Charlotte drafted Brandon Miller, so Scoot fell to his lap and Shea fell to his lap. Well, he still has to pull the trigger and make that move, right? He could have drafted any of those prospects, and those were the ones that he was looking at. So, when Donovan Klingen fell last year, he was ready for it. They had done their due diligence. He was a guy that they liked. He was ready to make that move. So, again, that's all part of being a GM.
Hey, what do you think Denny Avdia is? Is he potentially a number 1? Is he a 2 next to a legit 1? Like, what is he long-term? Because he's still young and developing, so I think he's got, another level he can get to. But what is he?
I think Denny has taken this opportunity and, grabbed the bull by the horns, right? And he's showing off, especially over the last month or so. I think if you're building out a roster and you're a championship contender, he's probably your number 2, right? Maybe a number 3 even. I don't think he's a number 1. I think he's a number 1 on this team right now, and that's great for building him up. But that's not a knock on him. Let's not get that one twisted. I mean, Scottie Pippen, right? He was number 2 to MJ, but Scottie Pippen's also one of the greatest basketball players the league's ever seen, right? So just being a number 2 doesn't mean you're bad. I think Denny, in the long run, is a number 2. I still think if you had a crazy good roster, you could use him back in like he was earlier in the year, the Manu Ginobili type, right? Manu Ginobili came off the bench for San Antonio despite the fact that he was one of their top 3 players, right? He didn't have to start, but he made an impact, still got his 35 minutes. And that's what I love about Denny, because you're seeing what he can do, but you could play him in that role. You could play him as the starting 3. You can play him as the starting 4. You can make him run the point most of the time. The versatility with this guy is off the charts.
I agree. I love the versatility. I like guys who can do a little bit of everything on the floor. Now, let me ask you a question. How has your view on Coach Billups changed from the time that he was hired year 1 up until now?
Well, I think the view is we thought he was a defensive guy. That didn't really show over the first few years. I think the first few years he was really kind of learning on the fly. I mean, first-time head coach, not a lot of assistant experience either. You got to get into these ears. And to give him a little bit of credit here, I mean, he didn't sign up for a rebuild. He signed up for a team that was led by Damian Lillard and had, playoff aspirations, right? That thing got pulled out from under him. Now he had to adjust his expectations and how he coached. And I am very, very big, Chad, that if you're going to knock a guy when they do bad, that you got to talk about them when they do good too. And we have done plenty of knocking on Coach Billups, but I think over the last 2-3 months, just like all his players, he has shown his progression as well. The defense has been locked in. You can see what he's trying to do. The rotations that he's doing. Yes, we could talk about subbing the players out the other night, but there's other things besides that. But you can see what he wants, and I think you've really started to see what a Coach Billups team looks like. And I don't think it necessarily looks bad. Does that mean that I think he's the guy moving forward? Probably not. I still think there's a I want to see Joe get his coach because Joe Cronin still has a Joe Cronin roster with a Neil Olshey head coach, right? I want to see Joe go through that interview process and get his guy. But I do think you have to give Coach Billups a lot of credit because he has shown that he's learned, he's gotten better, and the team is responding to what he wants.
So you would move on then? You would move on and let Joe hire his own coach?
I think it's this is going to sound interesting. It's almost going to sound like a cop-out. I don't think it is. But I think if Joe Cronin thinks that Chauncey Billups is the guy, I don't think it's a bad thing for him to bring him into his office and basically interview him. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to go through, I'm going to do all this, and now I have talked to you as if I'm interviewing you for this job, and now I trust you. Now I'm going to keep you on board. Like, that's the type of thing I want. I don't think you just keep him on board just because he's here. I want Joe to sit and go through that process, and then if he is convinced that Chauncey is still the guy, then I trust Joe. Then that's what I want to see.
I don't know. I like that. I mean, if you have a GM who's in place, he should be able to hire his own coach. If that's Chauncey Billups, then that's great. If it's somebody else, then I like the idea of Joe being able to bring in whoever it is, Chauncey Billups or somebody else, to do the job that he's looking for him to do. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, when you hire a GM, they should have the autonomy and the ability to bring in the staff that he believes is necessary to get the job done that he's looking for. I think that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so if that's what you go through and you think he's the guy, there might be people who don't like it. But if Joe thinks he's the guy for his roster, then who are we to say different? I do think it is interesting because I don't think a lot of people expected, with 2 weeks left in the season, that all of a sudden Taylor Jenkins would be a free agent and be available, right? He's going to command a lot on the market. You saw Mike Brown, who got let go from Sacramento. And I do think, there's been rumblings and rumors that, there's veteran-laden teams out there who might covet Chauncey. So we'll see. I think that there might be a little bit of a coaching carousel this summer around the entire NBA. It might be interesting.
All right, let's go out to the phones. I believe we have one of our good friends out there that wants to communicate with us. Mitch in New Jersey. My man Mitch, what's going on? What's cracking?
How you guys doing? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Mitch.
Disappointed at Duke. Well, I don't like Duke at all, so it was great. But I really thought Duke Cooper Flag especially would carry them all the way. So I guess I got root for Florida. But Cooper Flag, they were saying there'd be 3 or 4 guys be drafted in the first round. But I think Duke this draft is going to be better than what the Duke guys with Zion, Bartley, and Cam Reddish. He's just a bust. He just keeps the bench chair warm for the Lakers. I think this class will be better. But Cooper's going to stay out between this class and Zion's class, because Zion has left a lot to be desired, except for the dinner table.
Oh, no, it's okay. Nothing wrong with dinner. We want Cooper Flag here. We would love to have him.
Power forward. You can share it with he's a very good player. That was a very good trade with Washington. He's an Israeli guy. I forgot his last name.
Avdia.
Is that how you say Avdia? He's been really good.
Yeah, it's good enough. Yeah, it's good enough. Yeah. We love Denny. Denny's great. Yeah, he's big time famous. The Israeli in Israel and the Jewish people, they love Denny Avdia. He's terrific.
I know. Garner Minshew didn't work out for the Raiders, but he'll get a backup job. Chad, thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Mitch. Appreciate that. There's Mitch in New Jersey. Chris, basically at the top of the draft, it's pretty much Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and VJ Edgecombe. It's going to be Cooper Flag and the rest, those other 3 guys in some order, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. I know Ace Bailey's another player that a lot of people really, really like, and he has NBA ready written all over him. But this is the Cooper Flag draft, and we talked about this even last year, right? About how this draft coming up was going to be a deep draft, and it looks like it's going to play out like that. So we'll see where that goes moving forward. But yeah, man, Cooper Flag, just incredible. The question with Cooper, though, is say Portland lumps into this and they get number 1 and they get to draft Cooper. Then their question is who's gone? Whose minutes is he taking? You know what I mean? You're going to play. Yeah. You got DC at the 5, so you probably play Cooper at the 4, Denny at the 3. Okay, well, Now I don't want to get Tumani off the floor. You know what I'm saying? So where do I put two? Where do I put Sharp? And then there's
I bring Sharp off the bench.
Yeah,
I bring Sharp off the bench.
It doesn't matter, Chad, because if you wanted to bring Sharp off the bench, you wanted to start him, you wanted to bring Denny off the bench, it would still be a pretty darn good problem to have, right? Like, usually we're sitting here going, who's going to start because who's the best player? Now you'd be sitting there going, oh, gosh, who's the player that I think is really, really good enough to start, but I want to put him off the – it's a good problem to have.
Can you imagine having Denny being your sixth man? How sick that would be?
It'd be filthy.
Like, seriously.
It would be filthy.
Gosh. He might actually – Denny Avdia would – because, you know how Denny, if he were the sixth man, he would still get a ton of minutes. Like, he would be like the ultimate Manu Ginobili. He would embrace it and just come off the bench and start dominating fools. Yeah.
And again, and it's like – and the reason Pop did that with Manu was to give that bench that extra push, right? And then you could still get him in there with your starters, which he played a ton with the starters. He was still going to go get his 35 minutes a night. But when you did take out Tony Parker and you took out Tim Duncan, you didn't skip a beat because you had another guy there who could go run the offense when those guys were out. And so that's what made him such a darn good player. And he's one of the best Spurs of all time, one of the greatest international players I think the NBA's ever seen. So, yeah, that type of player, if Denny wants to be like that, that's good for Portland.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. I love it. Those are the type of problems I want to be discussing with you on air. It's like, I don't know, dude. What? Because my only point was, someone asked me the other day, I mean, like, Cooper Flagg is starting. Like, you're absolutely starting Flagg. It's just – I think at that point, even if you're the glorified sixth man, it wouldn't matter because you're going to have so much fun. The team would be so good, and you're going to have so much fun on the floor. But you're right. Even Cooper Flagg, what I love about him, I think Dwight made this point, you could play him at the 5 when you're going small ball if you wanted. That's how versatile that guy is.
Well, I mean, you could sit there and, Mitch just said he's not big enough to play center, but he's basically as big as Dwap Reith, and Dwap Reith goes and plays center, right, in those small ball lineups, or Jabari Walker, right? Now, if you could go get someone with the offensive prowess that Cooper has and put him in that position, yeah, that's scary. That's scary prospect to think about.
Yeah, no question about it. Chris Burkhart with me. He's got courtside coming up. What are you going to get into in the show tonight, brother?
Oh, we're going to dive in on this, obviously.
Well, here, hold on. What? Just forget that. Just hang with me for another segment because I want to talk to you about a couple of things from the game yesterday. You cool with that?
Yeah, you don't got to pull my arm.
Okay, good. More with Chris Burkhart when we come back. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino, getting ready for the championship game with Houston and Florida. Gators a 1.5-point favorite. This is your place to bet on college sports at your Northwest premier entertainment destination, Spirit Mountain Casino. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, Chris Burkhardt is hanging out with me. He's got Courtside Monday coming up at 6 o'clock as we get ready for the championship game with Florida and Houston. Who do you like in the game tonight, Burkhardt?
Well, there's a couple Blazer fans, Chad, who have reached out to me this season and convinced me to play a college football dynasty with them. And in the college football dynasty, I had to pick a team that was bad, so I picked Houston, and this was months ago. So now here they are in the championship game in real life, and I have to roll with my college football dynasty team, so I'm going with Houston.
I respect that. I love the NCAA football game. I just played a game last night. My dynasty with Arizona State's doing quite well, and I love being Cam Scatterbo on the game. It's so much fun. I can't get enough of that game. It is the primo. I have seen the top of the mountain, and it is good. That game is the best, man. It's money.
Right up there with Contra, right?
Gosh, it's like I play it, and the football is so real where it's just I can't get over how mind-blowingly great it is. What a phenomenal game.
Yes, they did
I'm not even joking, man. I love that game.
We
Gosh darn, it's good.
For it, and it feels so good.
Oh, so good, dude. It's so – I don't know. The video games have come a long ways. It's pretty awesome. But, hey, yesterday do you think Tamani Kamara is still playing because he's making a push for the Defensive Player of the Year award? Because, I mean, not only did he play yesterday, but he was fantastic.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Because once that game happened with Sacramento and you were eliminated and you were basically done with the play-in, it makes no sense to play him, especially if there's any inkling that ankle could be hurt. But I do think he wants to get out there and, make a statement and try to get some votes when it comes to all defensive teams or Defensive Player of the Year or what have you. So, I absolutely think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty impressed. Tamani Kamara has been terrific, but do you think we'll see Denny play again this year, or do you think they'll shut him down?
I think you'll probably see him play. I think it makes a lot of sense, Chad, especially when you get to, Sunday, Fan Appreciation Day. At least let the guys play. Maybe you pull them out early, but I think you get at least one more dose.
I'm okay with that. Nice to see Chris Murray, too, off the bench. 18 points on the second half. I don't know what he is yet as an NBA player, but I'll tell you what, man, when he gets in there, he's learned to be aggressive, and he's really good at underrated rebounder, and he's not afraid to put the ball on the floor and attack the rim.
I'll tell you what, I think he's actually been one of my favorite Blazers all year long. Like, if you're a hiring manager, Chris Murray's the type of person you want, because it doesn't matter if he's getting all the shots or playing 2 minutes or a DMP. Like, he is always ready to go. You can tell that when Chauncey says jump, he says how high. You know what I'm saying? And what I love about him is he doesn't do anything off the charts. He's not an out-of-this-world shooter. His defense is good, not great. Same with rebounding, all that stuff. But he does not make a lot of mistakes. So it makes up for all that. He's just a well-rounded, smart basketball player and always ready to go. And I love the fact he goes out there, drops 18 all in the second half, and just, has a go at it, man. And it's funny. He's a very, stoic guy, and then every once in a while he'll crack a smile, and you can tell he's just having a ball out there, and you love to see it.
Well, one thing that's going to be fun, too, is it looks like, the Warriors and Lakers who play those games on Friday and Sunday at Moda, it looks like those two teams are going to have something to play for. I kind of like the idea of the Blazers playing the role of spoiler in those situations too.
Absolutely, they can. It wouldn't it be great? I mean, you saw it right in 2019. It was Simons who goes off on the end of the year against the Kings. I mean, you could be the team who goes in here and all of a sudden maybe Chris Murray drops 30 on Golden State out of nowhere. No one sees it coming. Or maybe it's a Ryan Rupert night. Or hell, Shaden Sharp dropped 50 for us. Let's just have some fun. But that's a storyline right there. Lakers need a win to solidify top 4. And Shaden Sharp drops a 50-piece. Donovan Clingan, 10 blocks, 10 boards, and the Blazers win. It'd be beautiful.
How good would Golden State Denver be in the first round? I need that in my life, man. I need it. That would be a great series.
There's a lot of matchups right now in the West that are going to be incredible basketball. But yeah, Golden State, that Jimmy Butler trade, man. I mean, that now they got a guy who can take a little bit of the load off of Steph, and if he goes and he is playoff Jimmy, then that's a nasty thing for a team that's playing well. So Yeah, take them and you get Nikola Jokic, who's just casually dropping 60-point triple-doubles. He might be one of the best players this game's ever seen. Like, yeah, so hook it up. So hook it to my veins, as they say.
Yeah, hook it to my veins. Give me some of that action, man.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, dude, it's so cool. I'm looking for the playoffs. I will say this about player movement. Like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but Jimmy Butler going to Golden State and Luka going to the Lakers, like it has made the West playoffs, infinitely more exciting because of, the possibilities. I still think Oklahoma City is by far the best team, but with those two players going to where they did, you've got the young and upstart Houston Rockets, you've got the Thunder who have been dominant throughout the year, and then you got those, two wild cards with the Lakers and the Warriors along with Denver. Like that's good. That's going to be fun. That's very watchable television right there.
Well, you're sitting here, Chad, and everyone poo-poos the Lakers because they're the Lakers, right? But they go out, they trade for Luka, and they've started to put that thing together and play good basketball, and they have quietly just sat there and are the third seed in the West right now, right? A game and a half lead over Denver. So like you said, these last few games are going to matter. But, I mean, that's a win. You go out there and you get a top 3 seed as the Lakers did when they have had some struggles early in the year. That's a pretty good outcome, man.
That's a pretty good outcome right there. I love it. All right, Burkhart, what do you got coming up on courtside? What are you going to focus on?
Oh, we're going to talk about Joe Cronin and what that means for the Blazers. I know a lot of people automatically think that means that, Chauncey's back too. I don't think the two are connected at all, but I do like the fact that, the team is invested in Joe and shown their confidence here. They like what he's done. I've liked what he's done. We're going to talk about that and obviously talk about what not making the play-in means, what to expect over these last 3 games, and look a little bit towards that offseason because it's no longer in the distance. It's right around the corner.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it, man. Have a good time on courtside, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good.
All right, big thanks to Brendan Slaughter for engineering the program today. Big thanks to the Godfather Dwight James and Sean Hyken for joining the show. Big thanks to Spirit Mountain Casino, your place to bet on college sports, the Northwest premier entertainment destination for their hospitality and having me down here. Enjoy the title game tonight, which is going to tip off. It's just tipped off just a couple of moments ago, so we'll see if Houston will be able to continue their play and get the job done. But you guys have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Rip City Drive at 3 here on 620 Rip City Radio.